Roman legions were certainly large, but when several of these got together with their auxiliary units, the true size of such armies were absolutely massive. However, what is even more impressive is the logistical nightmare it took to get such forces from point A to point B. Today, we will bring this feat to life by simulating the 24-hour cycle of shuffling 50,000 beings a distance greater than the Straits of Gibraltar, or 76% the narrowest width of the English Channel. This is the true size of a Roman army on the march. Column was like a giant snake, which began coiled up in camp at the start of the day, slowly unraveled itself as it advanced, and then recoiled itself at the next camp at the end of the day. In this metaphor, the head of the snake leaves the first camp long before the tail does. Similarly, the head arrives at the second camp long before the tail finally comes to a rest. The longer the snake, the more daylight is wasted coiling itself at the start and end of each day. Past a certain size, the snake spends very little of its time actually advancing. This hopefully makes it clear why large armies could be so slow. To combat this phenomenon, large armies would often break themselves into smaller groups and disperse to ease the logistical burdens of travel and foraging. Commanders therefore had to find the right trade-off between the strength and agility of a battle group. For the Roman army, the compromise seems to have been around 4 legions. This was, after all, the standard size of a consular force of the Republic. But during the imperial era, things were less rigid, and there was certainly no hard and fast rule. Ultimately, this is just a convenient assumption for our model. But before we simulate this army on the march, let's understand its size. A typical early imperial legion at full strength is estimated to have boasted around 5,120 legionaries, 120 cavalry, 310 officers, 35 specialists, 1,600 slaves, 1,900 mules, and 128 horse spares. These were led by a command staff of about 12. Now multiply these figures by 4 for our legionary army group. These would have been helmed by a general, his bodyguard, support staff, and all their gear. But that was not all. The infantry-heavy force of Rome was often accompanied by auxiliary troops, which helped both increase their numbers and round out their capabilities. However, the size and composition of such a support force would vary greatly based on the needs of a campaign. For our model, we will assume the legions are joined by 4 cohorts of auxiliary archers, each of which numbered around 500, for a total of about 2,000 Sagittarii, with their own officers, support and gear. We will also assume that the legions are joined by 8 Ali of auxiliary cavalry, each of which is broken into 16 of the 32-man termi. Together, this mounted force numbers about 4,100 auxiliary cavalry in addition to their accompanying support elements. By placing this entire group end to end with 4 soldiers across to fit the width of most roads, and 1.2 meters between rows, you get the dimensions of our Roman army snake. It stretches out around 25 kilometers or 15.5 miles and takes 5.5 hours to unfurl at a regular pace.